Okay, it just hit, well, 3 o'clock my time, 4 o'clock your time. So I guess I will get started. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andre Luongo. I'm the co-founder and general manager of VDI. And I've spent most of my time here at VDI overseeing all products and curriculum development. I've displayed my contact information here. Feel free to contact me directly at any time if you have questions that come up after the presentation. A little bit about my company. VDI is a technology company that's been in operation for nearly 20 years, and it's primarily focused on simulation-based training programs. But in this presentation, I'd like to talk specifically about virtual reality, or VR for short, and its potential applications with driver training. Now, although I don't think it was posted this way in the agenda, but the title of the talk was supposed to be Virtual Reality, the Future of Driver Training, with a question mark at the end. This gives us the opportunity to explore whether the benefits of VR outweigh the challenges and whether VR in particular for driver training makes any sense. I have no vested interest in VR beyond discovering its potential to improve the effectiveness of driver training. I believe we have 50 minutes, but my presentation won't take nearly that long, and more like 20 minutes, which should give us plenty of time at the end for questions and further discussion. And I realize it's nearing the end of the day for many of you, so I won't keep you that long. I wish I could start by taking a poll to gauge how familiar everyone is with VR. I mean, if you've never tried it, let me just say it's really cool, life-changing in some cases. And that's because VR can immerse you into worlds which you never would have been able to reach otherwise, be it at the bottom of the ocean or top of Mount Everest or even into space. And not just visit, but also interact with those worlds. So in VR, I personally spent time in space station, interacting with all the systems an actual astronaut would. I've tried my hand at sailing across the open waters, and I can tell you based on my performance, I'm glad it wasn't real. VR can take us so many places, but the question is, does it make it a good technology for training or just for entertainment? I guess as an example, some of you may be old enough to remember when doing a book report in school meant going to the library and finding that Encyclopedia Britannica, looking up everything there is to know about elephants. And if you were lucky, there'd even be a picture of an elephant or at least a sketch of one. Or you may be lucky enough to catch a National Geographic show doing a segment on elephants and their natural habitat. Well, today, you just go to the internet and look up all the information you care to know about elephants and likely videos of them as well. But I'm telling you, what's coming next with VR is a whole different animal, if I can say that. With VR, you won't be reading about elephants. You'll be standing in the middle of the African savanna as you're surrounded by a herd of elephants. You won't have to imagine how big they are. You'll hear the ground shake as a large elephant just lumbers past you and blows his trunk, close enough even to touch, which in VR, as a matter of fact, you can reach out and touch them. So, but question is, this technology still just a gimmick or a passing trend? Well, Facebook didn't think so, because back in 2014, it purchased the leading VR headset manufacturer for $20 billion. And just recently, Facebook, which arguably is one of the largest and most influential companies in the world, changed its name from Facebook to Meta. And Meta, for those who may not be familiar, is a VR-based world that the industry is confident that this is how, in the near future, we will interact with others in a social, business, and classroom setting. Between you and I'm not that confident that that's the best use of VR or that it will be widely adopted as they might think, but I'm not the one piling billions of dollars into the technology. Well, but last year I attended a VR trade show in Santa Clara, and Meta was the topic that companies were all talking about and working towards, whether they made hardware or supporting systems, hand tracking, haptic feedback, even digital aroma technology. I mean, these companies are piling millions of dollars into development of systems and hardware in support of the VR industry, with training as one of its key applications. And so this is where I think VR has its most promise beyond just entertainment. But there are challenges, because some of why I'm not sure the metaverse will, or that it will be slow to be adopted unless they can address some of these previous issues I mentioned. The first challenge is that VR requires you to wear a headset that in its current form is bulky and somewhat uncomfortable. The VR headset can also cause considerable eye strain if worn for too long. And the biggest challenge for any application, especially those asking the user to walk through a virtual world, is VR can be very disoriented and even nauseating. And this is because there is a disconnect between what the eye perceives that you're moving and what the body correctly understands that you are not. Well, despite these shortcomings, there's probably way more VR training programs in use today than you're likely aware of. A few examples would be Walmart, who's using VR in their Walmart training academies. Who knew? And they teach new technologies, soft skills, situation awareness. Lufthansa Airlines uses VR to train its flight attendants, allowing them to train inside a virtual aircraft cabin. And these examples are just in addition to the more obvious training applications for dangerous jobs, pilots, oil rig workers, nuclear power plant technicians, et cetera. The benefits of VR training become obvious when your alternative is to attempt that training in a hazardous environment, even if that's the environment that one will actually eventually be working in. But what we're mostly interested in is teaching kids how to drive. And driving a car is not a dangerous occupation. Or is it? Because maybe it is, because especially for these new drivers who are facing more technology and more distractions than ever before, it can be. But back to, what about the challenges? Are the benefits of VR for driver training worth the potential downsides? My cautious opinion is yes. And this is because driver training and simulation, or VR-based simulation, the lessons tend to be segmented anyways into smaller chunks, less than 5 to 10 minutes. And the driver can easily take breaks in between. Also, this may sound contradictory for driver training, but the driver in the lesson is not moving, either in the real world or in the virtual world. Although the car is moving at high speeds, the driver is not moving in relationship to their world, which is the car. Their immediate surroundings do not move, just as it is in a real car. This all but eliminates the feeling of disorientation attributed to the disconnect in perceived movement. Last year, I gave a talk about the current simulation technology and driver training. Simulations itself has been around for a while. Just think of VR as taking that to the next level. All of the same advantages of simulation hold true. The type of experiences you can create, the consistent training you can offer by creating and curating all the teaching moments, and that you can train dangerous situations in a safe environment. So let me give you an example. There's a scenario in one of our driver training programs where a soccer ball rolls across the street from a row of parked cars next to a playground. A very consistent thing occurs. The teen driver or novice driver, already faced with many distractions, just in time notices the ball rolling across the street. What does the teen driver do? They focus intently on the ball as it makes its way across the street. Contrast this to the adult or more experienced driver who, after seeing the ball, immediately looks back to the line of cars where the ball came from to see if there's a child chasing after it. Same event, but the adult driver anticipates an upcoming hazard, typically because they have faced a similar scenario sometime in their driving experience. The teen driver thinks he's paying full attention to the event, but cannot anticipate what might happen because he's never faced that situation. So I, for one, think it's important to get that novice driver the experience necessary before somebody gets hurt. But imagine training this particular scenario in the real world. The pass-fail result for the driver and for the kid chasing the ball would be life-changing. In simulation, we can put the new driver into situations that you couldn't or wouldn't want to put in the real world. Because you don't want a new driver to be faced with a kid running out in front of them or to drive distracted on a pass-fail basis, because the costs are obviously too high. But this actually holds true for adults as well. I once asked a fleet manager about how he trains his employees in inclement weather, such as fog and snow. He said he couldn't because it was too dangerous. I said, isn't that the point? To train them on how to handle some of the more dangerous aspects of driving, the issues that often lead to a crash. So in simulation, we create those experiences. We measure the outcome in a controlled environment. We can provide experiences with the most challenging and dangerous situations, again, without putting the driver or others in danger. Furthermore, when training a whole class of students, simulation allows you to create a common curriculum and a set of experiences that can be shared among all students. This provides consistent training for all students, and yet still provides the flexibility to address individuals who might be struggling with a certain concept, allowing them to repeat lessons if necessary. The program can be self-paced and self-contained, instructor-led, allowing the program to be curated to focus on the most pressing topics. And it also allows the opportunity for unlimited practice in a wide variety of weather, road conditions, controlled or assigned by the instructor. Compare this then to behind the wheel training, where you can only hope that during this in-vehicle training that something happens, a near miss ideally, so that the new driver gets some experience with challenging events, such as a distracted pedestrian or interacting with school buses or hydroplaning, and that every student in the class gets that same experience, which unfortunately is not very likely. And an unplanned event that wasn't previously prepared for as a learning moment may not be effective anyways. So the bottom line, the way events fold in the real world is not always the best way to teach a concept. So how does VR improve on this? And why are companies investing in VR? The key is immersion. There's just no comparison to the level of immersion and interactivity that VR provides. VR makes learning fully experiential, and higher levels of engagement equal higher retention. Like in the driver scenarios I just mentioned, the student remembers what to do because they've already done it. There was a well-known study by Edgar Dale, and he concluded that after 2 weeks, the human brain remembers 10% of what it reads, 20% of what it heard, which is really depressing, but 90% of what it does or simulates. So the goal of VR training is to train in the environment they will be performing in, with all aspects of sight and sounds, so that the student recognizes all the subtle clues that led up to a dangerous situation and reacts intuitively. So you may say, despite all the VR's fidelity and immersion, wouldn't it be better then to train in a real car? Well, not counting the fact that training in a real car is more expensive, less efficient for a large class, VR-based simulation, as I mentioned, offers consistent structured learning, and again, in a safe and effective way. So the question is then, where is VR for driver training? Is it possible now, or is it just a future thing? Well, it's both. There isn't a practical VR training program available currently, but I don't think you're going to have to wait long because the benefits are just too great to ignore. Now, I've spent the last few decades creating simulation environments for driver training, and now VR offers an experience that will not only enhance learning, but eliminate some of the limitations found in traditional PC-based simulators, such as the ability for the student to more thoroughly and naturally scan their environment, to offer a more human field of view, and to interact with the controls of the vehicle, made even more so easier with the advent of hand tracking technologies that allow the driver to interact with the virtual phone or make natural gestures to put on their seatbelt, et cetera. So I, for one, am pretty excited about what we can create with the technology to make the driver training more realistic, more impactful, and of course, to do a better job at keeping our kids safe. And I'm only hoping now that VR can live up to its potential. Well, as promised, I've kept the presentation pretty short in order to leave plenty of time for questions. And again, I'm very aware it's getting late for many of you. So I appreciate everyone's attendance, and I'm happy to open it up for questions. I don't know if we're going to do that via chat or someone's going to read them. But again, feel free to contact me directly if you have any questions that come up after the call.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I am curious as to kind of rollouts. I mean, I've heard presentations like this in the past that it's coming, that it's gonna happen. What kind of time frame do you think this is actually on in terms of inception?
Wasn't here to chat specifically about my company, but we are actually in development right now with it. So it'll be the first VR-based product out, but you're probably talking end of year for not a full driving training curriculum, but for focus more on distracted and impaired driving awareness program, which will be an easier test. And then probably another year after that.
It'll be very small scale.
Well, personally, for our company, we have a full driving curriculum for novice drivers and for adult fleet drivers, but we also have a distracted and impaired driving course as well. The reason I chose to do that one first is because it is smaller increments. The distracted driving is an awareness course. You line up 50 kids to go through it, and they take 5 or 10 minutes to take the awareness course alone instead of a full curriculum, which is typically taught in segments of 10, 20 minutes anyways over the course of a semester. But only because it was a smaller one.
Thank you.
I do have a question. I do own an Oculus, and it's a great device. However, I do get that motion sickness. Is there anything in the future that will be coming up to address that motion sickness?
As I mentioned before, one of the first games I ever played that was close to driving looked like, just for a test, it looked like some Mario Karts, if you're familiar with that. You're just some avatar. And they took steps in that program to reduce the what is called VR sickness or disorientation, where they have an open concept car, so you're free to reach outside the world. And that was pretty nauseating for me too. And then they had one that had the full A-pillars and frame around it, as if you're kind of in a car, but it's more like a go-kart. And then finally, they put what looked like a Spartan helmet to reduce the peripheral vision. None of them worked that great. But again, from personal experience, from the testing we've been doing in the driving simulator, I can only speak for mine in that sense, is you're in a vehicle that's not moving. So your world is not moving. So we've not had anyone have disorientation. We have not sent it out into the public where thousands of people have tried it. So I don't have a fair percentage of people. There'll always be somebody who gets disoriented, and there's almost nothing you can do about it. It is just the way humans are built. If there's a disconnect between what your eyes see and what your body feels, there's going to be disorientation. You can always get used to it, but it depends how long you have to do that. If it's like I said, I talked about the awareness course we have, you've got 5 minutes, and you don't have, a couple of days to get used to it because you own it at home. So,
Okay, thank you.
So it is just naturally going to be the biggest challenge. Yeah. All right, do we have any other questions? Okay, well, as I mentioned before, you have my contact information if you want to send me a quick email. If you have any questions that pop up you think of later, be happy to answer them. So again, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your time, and hopefully we'll chat with some of you soon.